Even though Rick Riordan promised the fans a faithful adaptation of his Percy Jackson novels, the show made its own adjustments and changes. And it wasn't any different in episode 3. The first big difference is in the scene where Percy is choosing his companions for the quest. Chiron gives Percy a chance to choose 2 more people from the people presented to him before hitting the way. We could have seen Clarice, Luke, Annabeth, and many others. But Percy makes up his mind even before Chiron is finished speaking. He chooses Annabeth and she accepts. In the book, however, Annabeth volunteers as she was waiting for the opportunity to go on the quest from the moment she became a part of Camp Half-Blood. Staying on the topic of his quest partners, in the show, Percy explains why he chose them and not someone else. He even explained the reasoning to Luke. We know that he chose Grover because they're friends and he trusts him with his whole being, and Annabeth because he thought they would never become friends. He wanted to play it safe, as the Oraculum's prophecy included a line about a friend betraying him. This didn't happen in the novel. Another difference is the amount of information that is provided to Percy before his quest. In the novel, Percy is having dreams about his father Poseidon and Zeus fighting, which is one of the reasons he's chosen for the quest. What's more, the novel explains why 2 god brothers don't like each other and why the god of the underworld, Hades, wanted to steal Zeus's lightning bolt. It's a shame that the show left it out, but it's understandable as it's not totally pivotal for the plot. One of the smaller details that the fans noticed was the amount of money Percy received for his quest. In the show, Percy tells Luke that he was given $200, which is not much for the cost of traveling to the other end of the US, plus food and other necessities. It might be said that the camp went broke, but in the book, his financial situation is even more dire. He's given only $100. The fans joked that even the reason for the change in the show was growing inflation, which had to be reflected. In the show, the bus scene involves Annabeth noticing something strange about the woman sitting there. The moment she senses that something is off, she hides herself under her cap, a gift from her mother Athena, which makes her invisible. Not immediately jumping her, Annabeth makes a conversation about the intentions of one of the Hades Furies. She alerts Grover and Percy, who break the window, and Annabeth makes a hole into a Fury with her dagger. After that, they jump off the bus. In the book, not only the scene is longer, but the events also play out differently. Percy's quest begins with the confrontation with all 3 Furies on the bus. To get rid of them, Percy borrows Annabeth's cap to sneak around them and quickly vaporize them. He manages to send 2 Furies back to the underworld where they belong. After that, the trio makes their exit from the vehicle as Percy's uncle Zeus tries to permanently get rid of Percy by striking the bus with lighting. Fortunately, only Alecto is inside. We can see in the show that Percy and Annabeth didn't hit it right away. Instead, they struggled to cooperate. Percy even tries to invent democracy in the bus just to be involved in the decisions, even the most trivial. What should Annabeth buy in the shop? The bickering is annoying Grover, who starts to sing the consensus song, which makes Annabeth and Percy stop for a moment and stare at him. The song worked, but not in the way Grover predicted. One could say the task failed successfully. The thing with the song never happened in the book, but it's so in character for Grover that the fans were praising the creativity of the writers of the show. What's more, the show slightly changed the reason for the hostility between Percy and Annabeth. In the Disney Plus show, they just don't like each other as normal 12-year-old kids who happen to not vibe with every person they meet. In the book, the reason goes beyond their personal feelings. The hostility is explained as normal between the children of Poseidon and Athena. To be fair, it's one-sided rivalry and hostility from Annabeth, and it's something difficult to understand for Percy as they don't even know each other properly, but Annabeth explains all the reasons. Their godly parents had several spats throughout the years. One time, Athena caught Poseidon with his lover in her temple, and the other time, Poseidon and Athena competed to be patron of Athens. These things made it hard for their children to like each other. Would be more interesting if these details were kept in the show, because it'd make their entire relationship and dynamics much more interesting for the audience. When it comes to the sequence with Medusa, many things were changed from the books, which made the confrontation and the fight more real and scarier. In the show, the trio finds out what Auntie M means almost immediately and knows that they're about to meet Medusa. In the book, it takes so much more time until they realize that something is seriously wrong with the Garden Gnome Emporium. They enjoy their time there with the food and everything. Another thing that happened in the show but not in the book was the fact that Alecto followed the trio to Medusa's lair. Medusa's character is also different from the book, as we see her as less angry angry, bitter, and villainous in the adaptation. She's someone who inspires sympathy with her tragic fate. What's more, she underlines the similarities between her and Percy, as both of them were left behind by the god. The book lovers know that Medusa was a priestess in Athena's temple who was seduced by the god, for which she was punished by her goddess. Percy is a rebellious teenager who sees the unfairness in the god's actions, so he'd side up with Medusa. It's another reason for his disillusionment with the gods and their ways. Rick Riordan agreed with the change. Steinberg said in the interview that they were having conversations about how much Medusa's story resembled Sally's, where both women fell in love with the same god, but their experiences ended differently. What's more, in the next episodes, there'll be a flashback scene featuring Poseidon and Sally, but it'll also involve Medusa, which will be important for Percy. In the book, he's still moved by her words, but not as much as in the show, where the scene with Medusa was placed into Percy's narrative and the development of future events. The fans might remember the movie adaptation, where Percy defeated Medusa by using an iPod as a mirror. Quite iconic, but completely inaccurate. The fans were afraid that something like that would happen again, but it thankfully didn't. In the show, the fighting scene resembles more horror than an action movie, where Medusa stalks them in the garden. The book is more action-oriented. The changes didn't end there. The show also included a moment where Medusa offers Percy a deal. If he betrays his friends in return, she helps him to save his mother, Sally. That doesn't happen in the book. The scene, however, hinted at Percy's fatal flaw, which will be important later in the series. Talking about fatal flaws, Percy's wasn't the only one hinted at. Annabeth also had a moment where it could have been spotted. In the show, Annabeth finds a creative way to ensure no one will be turned into a stone. She puts her cap on Medusa's head, which makes her invisible and unable to use her powers. Percy doesn't hesitate and removes her head from the rest of the body. It's an interesting way to keep Medusa's demise PG-13. It was slightly funny how Percy was walking around with nothing in his hands as the head was invisible. The book is more detail-oriented, which makes Percy's actions more disgusting but necessary. The adaptation also shows us that Percy realizes how important is the cap for Annabeth, so he finds a way to remove it without Medusa becoming once again dangerous. His solution is to put the head in the box and send it to Olympus, fully aware that it'll make the gods angry, which is Percy Jackson as we know him and love him. Percy sending the head to Olympus is something that also happens in the book, and his actions will have consequences. The show was, however, faithful with the I am impertinent interaction, which made the fans go crazy. The last thing that happened in episode 3 was a man in a post office uniform coming to the Empire State Building with a special key that allows him to go to the 600th floor. In his hands, he was carrying a box which was looking familiar. It was the box that Percy sent to the Olympians. The man was singing to himself while waiting to reach the highest floor. It was Percy's cousin, the god of thieves and travelers, and the messenger of the gods, Hermes. The fans noticed that he looked kind of proud and ready for the chaos the male was about to create among the Olympians. This didn't happen in the novel. We didn't learn anything about the male until the meeting between Percy and his father. The fans loved the addition to the story. The changes and additions were so well executed that the fans were happy with the results. As one of the fans wrote on X, "At this point, I couldn't care less what they changed from the books because Arian, Walker, and Leah are so canon golden trio that I'm convinced all these deviations happened in the books and I just didn't read it right. And that's my bad. Have you noticed more changes or additions in episode 3? Let us know in the comments."